What happens when one of Hollywood's most unapologetic voices faces off against daytime television's most unfiltered host, and the cameras never stop rolling. The result is an explosive moment that leaves the audience breathless, the producers scrambling, and millions talking long after the credits roll. Let's get into it. The day started like any other episode of The View. The studio lights gleamed across the polished floor, the live audience buzzing as the theme music faded. Joy Behar sat center stage, sharp-witted as always, wearing that sly grin that could charm you 1 second and cut you down the next. To her left, Sunny Hostin flipped through cue cards, focused calm, watching everything. Sarah Haynes leaned in, smiling. And across from them, the guest of the hour, Florence Pugh. Florence carried herself with the effortless grace of someone who had stopped asking for permission a long time ago. Her blonde hair was slicked back, her posture unshakable, and her expression unreadable. She'd come to promote her new independent film, a daring exploration of identity and control that had critics raving. But as everyone in that studio would soon realize, The View had its own script that morning. Joining us now, Joy began, her tone cheerful but pointed, is Florence Pugh, the star of Bare Bones, a film that's already stirring up a bit of controversy. Florence, thanks for being here. Thank you for having me, Florence replied, her British accent soft yet firm. It's been a wild few weeks, so it's nice to finally talk about the movie itself. Joy's smile twitched. Oh, we'll definitely get to the movie, she said, flipping through her notes. But first, you've also been trending lately for your, let's call them bold red carpet looks. The internet seems divided. Some say it's empowering. Others think it's just shock value. What do you say to that? The question hung in the air like smoke. Florence tilted her head slightly, a faint smile curving her lips. I say it's my body, my choice, and my expression. I don't design my outfits to shock anyone. I wear what makes me feel like me. Joy leaned in, resting her chin on her hand. Sure, but don't you think there's a line between confidence and, well, attention-seeking? It feels like sometimes you're performing empowerment, not living it. The audience shifted. A few uncomfortable laughs. Florence blinked, slow and deliberate. Performing empowerment? She repeated. That's an interesting phrase. No, Joy, I don't perform confidence. I just exist in it. That's something a lot of people still seem uncomfortable with. Sunny glanced between them, clearly sensing the rising tension. I think, she began carefully, what Florence is saying is that expression is personal. What's empowering for one person might not look the same for another. But Joy wasn't done. I get that, she said, raising her hands. I'm all for confidence. I just think sometimes people say it's feminism when really, it's marketing. I mean, you wore a sheer pink gown with nothing under it. That's not exactly subtle. Gasps. A low rumble of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Florence's smile vanished. Her tone cooled. Joy, she said, eyes locked on her. When you reduce a woman's confidence to a marketing stunt, you tell every young girl watching that they should be ashamed for owning their body. Is that really the message The View wants to send? The tension hit like a spark to dry wood. Joy chuckled, that dry, dismissive laugh she used when things got too serious. Oh, come on, Florence, don't make this about every woman. I'm just talking about you. You're a celebrity, you know the game. Florence's voice sharpened. I know the game, Joy. And I also know when people hide behind that word to excuse judgment. If I were a man, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The studio fell quiet. You could hear a pin drop. The camera panned to Sunny, her lips parted, unsure if she should intervene. Joy leaned back, crossing her arms. So now I'm sexist? She said, eyebrows raised. I didn't say that, Florence replied evenly. But the way you're speaking, it's the same tone women have been hearing for decades. You're too much, too loud, too confident. I'm just tired of it. The crowd erupted into scattered applause. A few people cheered. Joy smirked, masking irritation. Well, I guess you told me, she said sarcastically. Florence smiled, but it wasn't polite anymore. I think I did. Sunny jumped in quickly. Let's bring it back to your film, she said, attempting to steady the ship. It's a story about a woman reclaiming her voice, right? Yes, Florence said, still looking at Joy. It's about not apologizing for being who you are. Joy interjected again, her tone playful but with an edge. Well, maybe next time wear something less distracting while reclaiming it. A stunned silence. Florence froze, blinking once, twice. The audience gasped. Some booed. Joy realized too late she'd crossed the line. Florence leaned forward, her voice low but piercing. Joy, I came here to talk about my work, not to have my worth measured by how much fabric I wear. You should know better. And with that, she pushed back her chair. The screech echoed across the stage. Florence, wait, Sunny began, but Florence stood unshaken. She looked at Joy for a long moment, then turned to the audience. Ladies, she said, her tone calm but cutting, never let anyone tell you confidence is a costume. The audience broke into applause, loud, emotional, rising like a wave. Florence gave a small nod, then walked off stage, her heels striking the floor like punctuation marks to the end of a sentence she refused to rewrite. Joy sat frozen, face pale. Well, she muttered, forcing a laugh. Guess she didn't like my questions. But the audience didn't laugh with her. Behind the scenes, producers rushed, trying to figure out what to do. The camera cut to commercial, but it was too late. That moment, that unfiltered electric clash, was already burned into memory. What none of them realized yet was that the real storm was just beginning. The commercial break began, but the tension backstage didn't fade, it deepened. Producers whispered frantically through headsets, trying to find Florence before she left the building. Joy Behar stayed seated at the table, sipping from her mug, eyes fixed ahead like nothing had happened. But the tremor in her hand betrayed her composure. Is she gone? Someone asked off camera. A stage manager jogged past, phone in hand. She's heading toward the exit, he said breathlessly. She's not coming back. Joy rolled her eyes, muttering just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Unbelievable. Some people can't handle a little banter. Sunny Hostin turned to her, her voice low but firm. Joy, that wasn't banter. That was personal. Joy shot her a look. Oh, come on. It's the VieW. We ask tough questions. She's a big girl. She's also a guest, Sunny replied, her tone calm but cutting. And you made it about her body. That's not journalism. That's ego. Joy didn't answer. The crew's chatter filled the silence instead, thick with unease. Meanwhile, in the corridor just outside the studio, Florence Pugh stood beside her publicist, her breathing steady but her hands trembling slightly. The hallway buzzed with activity. Assistants rushing by, camera operators repositioning, the faint hum of audience chatter leaking through the doors. Her publicist, a woman named Erica, spoke quickly. Florence, we can go back in, let them smooth it out. We'll control the narrative if you give them one more segment. Florence stared at the exit sign. Control the narrative? She said quietly. That's what Joy just tried to do, control it. She adjusted her suit jacket, her jaw tightening. I'm not going back to be her soundbite. People will talk either way, Erica warned. You walking out, it's going to blow up. Florence looked at her reflection in a nearby glass panel. Good, she said finally. Then maybe they'll start talking about how women are treated when they don't play nice. Inside the studio, the red light above the cameras flickered back on. The audience cheered half-heartedly as Joy returned from break, smiling wide, pretending nothing had happened. Well, she began, her tone forcefully chipper, we had a bit of an interesting moment before the break. Florence Pugh had to step out for a minute. Sunny cut in gently. Joy, she left. Joy blinked. Well, yes, she stepped out. She left the show, Sunny said again, firmer this time. The audience reacted, small gasps, whispers. Joy chuckled awkwardly. Okay, fine, she left. I guess I hit a nerve. But hey, I thought we were having a conversation about empowerment. The discomfort was palpable. The camera caught Sarah Haynes shifting uncomfortably, clearly unsure how to react. Empowerment isn't about provoking someone until they walk off, Sunny said softly. It's about understanding them. Joy forced another smile. Sunny, you can't be serious. We're not therapists. We ask questions, we get reactions. That's the show. Sunny's eyes met hers. Maybe that's the problem. The studio audience fell silent. The tension wasn't just between Joy and Florence anymore. It had seeped into the very fabric of the VieW itself. After the show wrapped, Joy was the first to leave the table. She moved briskly toward the green room, muttering, I'm not apologizing for doing my job. Her voice carried just enough for a few crew members to hear. One of the producers caught up with her. Joy, we're already getting calls. It's trending. #Florence walks off. Joy stopped in her tracks. Already, within 5 minutes of the commercial break, the producer said. Someone from the audience posted the clip on TikTok. Joy sighed, massaging her temple. Of course they did. She entered her dressing room and closed the door, exhaling heavily. For the first time that morning, she looked genuinely shaken. Her reflection in the mirror stared back, confident, composed, but older. Tired. Maybe I went too far, she murmured to herself, though she wasn't ready to admit it out loud. Across the city, Florence's car pulled up outside her hotel. The city's noise faded behind the tinted windows as she sat in silence, scrolling through her phone. Notifications flooded the screen, clips, headlines, tweets. Florence Pugh storms off the VieW after clash with Behar. Behar body shames Pugh in heated exchange. Florence defends herself live on air. She sighed, locking the phone. Of course that's what they focus on, she muttered. Not the film, not the message. Just the drama. Her publicist glanced over. It's already viral, Florence. You're trending #1 worldwide. Florence looked out the window, the city lights blurring against the glass. Then maybe people needed to see that moment, she said. Maybe it's bigger than the movie. That night, Behar opened her social media accounts, only to be met with a storm. Thousands of comments flooded her posts. Some defended her. Most didn't. You crossed a line, Joy. She came to promote her art, not be humiliated. Florence handled that with grace. Joy was cruel. Joy scrolled silently, face tightening with every comment. Then one post caught her eye, a still image from the show. Florence, standing, eyes burning with calm fury, Joy mid-sentence, mouth open. The caption read, "When confidence meets condescension." It already had 2 million likes. Meanwhile, on Instagram, Florence broke her silence. A simple black and white story appeared on her account. Sometimes walking away says more than words ever could. Within an hour, her post was everywhere, reposted by fans, celebrities, and activists. The clip of her final words on the show, "Never let anyone tell you confidence is a costume," became a viral mantra, echoed in captions and comment sections across the internet. Talk shows the next morning dissected every second of the encounter. Some praised Florence for standing her ground. Others called her reaction dramatic. But no one could deny it. The confrontation had struck a nerve. Backstage sources whispered that producers at the VieW were furious, worried about backlash. Others quietly admitted that the viral moment was boosting ratings. Florence didn't care. She stayed silent, letting the moment speak for itself. Joy, on the other hand, wasn't sleeping. Behind her trademark humor and bravado, something about that walkout lingered. A reminder that maybe, for once, she'd gone too far. She sat in her dressing room the next morning, staring at her reflection again. Her producer knocked softly. "Joy, ABC wants a statement." Joy didn't look up. "Tell them I'll think about it." Then she turned back to the mirror, her expression unreadable. Part guilt, part pride, and part fear of losing control of a conversation she'd started, but couldn't finish. Outside the studio, Florence Pugh went on with her day, calm, radiant, untouchable. The world had turned her moment of defiance into a movement, and for once she didn't need to speak. Her silence said everything. The next morning, the world was still talking about the VieW. It wasn't the kind of chatter the network wanted. It was raw, emotional, and relentless. Headlines screamed from every corner of the internet. Florence Pugh walks off live TV after heated clash. Clips replayed on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram Reels. Millions of views, millions of opinions. At ABC headquarters, the tension was unbearable. Producers huddled in conference rooms, debating how to handle the fallout. Should Behar issue an apology? Should the show address it on air? Every option seemed risky. But one thing was clear. People were not letting this story go. Behar sat in her dressing room again, scrolling through her phone in silence. For someone who had built a career on outspokenness, the sudden wave of criticism felt like an unexpected storm. Comment after comment rolled in, dissecting her tone, her words, her smirk. Behar is a bully. She embarrassed Florence on national TV. Accountability is overdue. She tossed the phone onto her makeup table and sighed. Her reflection stared back, tired eyes, forced smile. "They don't know me," she muttered. "They don't know how this show works." But deep down, a part of her knew this wasn't just about how the show worked. This was about a line that had been crossed, a line she couldn't rewind. Sunny Hostin knocked softly on the door before stepping in. She held a cup of coffee and that calm expression that had always balanced Joy's fire. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Joy exhaled. "I'm fine. Just another day in the circus." Sunny sat down across from her. "Joy, listen," she began carefully. "I've worked with you for years. You speak your mind. That's who you are. But yesterday, you hit a nerve." Florence wasn't trying to pick a fight. She was defending herself. Joy frowned. "So I'm the villain now?" No, Sunny said, shaking her head. But you need to understand why people saw it that way. She didn't come here to be made an example of. She came here to talk about her work. Joy stared down at her hands, saying nothing. Outside, the chatter of studio staff filtered through the hallway. Whispers of sponsors calling, emails flooding in, ratings skyrocketing. Controversy was bad for peace, but great for business. That irony wasn't lost on anyone. Later that day, Joy's producer entered with a clipboard. ABC wants you to address it tomorrow on air, he said. Doesn't have to be an apology. Just something. Joy smirked faintly. They want damage control. They want humanity, he replied softly. Joy looked at him, and for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. Meanwhile, Florence Pugh sat by her apartment window in Manhattan, coffee mug in hand, scrolling through the headlines she'd tried to avoid. Her publicist had told her to stay quiet. The internet's already on your side, Erica had said. Don't feed it. But Florence wasn't sure she liked that idea either. The noise felt strange, empowering but heavy. Thousands of women had tagged her in posts about confidence, body image, and respect. Some called her a hero. Others said she overreacted. One comment in particular stuck with her. She didn't walk out because she was weak. She walked out because she was done explaining her worth. Florence smiled faintly. That was the truth. She opened her phone camera and hit record. The frame showed her face in soft daylight, no makeup, just clarity. Hi everyone, she began, her tone calm but firm. I've seen the clips, the headlines, and the comments. I just want to say, standing up for yourself isn't dramatic. It's necessary. Women have been told for too long to stay polite, to laugh things off. But sometimes walking away is the only way to be heard. She paused, her eyes steady. I respect Joy Behar, but I also respect myself. And I hope we can have better conversations than the one we had yesterday. She ended the video there. No hashtags, no captions, just her words. Within an hour, the clip went viral. Again. The next day on The VieW, the studio was unusually quiet before filming began. Joy Behar adjusted her notes, her expression unreadable. The red light flicked on. Cameras rolled. Good morning, she began, her tone softer than usual. Before we start today's show, I want to take a minute to address what happened yesterday with Florence Pugh. The audience murmured, leaning in. Joy continued. I've been doing this show for a long time. I've had debates, disagreements, even blow-ups. But my intention has always been to challenge, not to hurt. I realize now that my words came across as judgmental, and that's on me. Florence is a brilliant actress and a strong woman, and I wish her nothing but the best. The audience broke into polite applause. It wasn't a grand apology, but it was something. Sunny glanced at Joy and gave her a small nod. Progress, however small, still counted. That same afternoon, Florence reposted Joy's clip to her Instagram story with a brief caption. Appreciated. For a moment, the noise began to settle. The storm that had consumed both women for 48 hours finally started to fade. But while the internet moved on, something lingered in both of them. For Joy, it was reflection, rare glimpse into the limits of her humor. For Florence, it was relief, the satisfaction of knowing she hadn't compromised herself for comfort. As evening fell, Joy sat alone on her balcony, the city glowing below. She sipped her wine and replayed the moment in her mind. That sharp exchange, Florence's eyes burning with calm strength, the stunned silence afterward. She found herself smiling, but not mockingly this time. Kids got guts, she whispered. Across town, Florence laughed with friends over dinner, her phone buzzing nonstop with messages of support. She wasn't angry anymore, just lighter, free. The confrontation had started as another messy moment in celebrity TV, but it had ended as something bigger. A spark that ignited a conversation about respect, confidence, and the power of walking away. The aftermath of the confrontation rippled through the entertainment world like a shockwave. For days, talk shows, news outlets, and online commentators couldn't stop replaying the clip. It wasn't just another celebrity spat. It had become a cultural moment. The VieW had hosted countless debates over the years, but this one hit differently. Something about the way Florence Pugh stood her ground, the calm defiance in her voice, the way she refused to shrink, struck a nerve with millions watching around the world. Morning shows picked it apart frame by frame. On Good Morning America, a panel discussed whether Florence had overreacted. Walking off sends a message, one host said. But did it close the door on real conversation? Another replied, Maybe she's tired of conversations that always start with judgment. The internet had already decided. Florence's clip, her final words before walking away, had been set to music, turned into edits, memes, and fan tributes. Young women quoted her line, "Never let anyone tell you confidence is a costume." On TikTok videos about self-worth and empowerment. Hashtags like hashtag Florence walked for us and hashtag respect women started trending worldwide. And yet, not everyone agreed. Talk radio hosts accused her of being too sensitive. Columnists called it a calculated PR stunt. But every attempt to spin it seemed to crumble under the power of that moment, a woman saying enough on live television. Joy Behar, meanwhile, faced her own reckoning. For the first time in years, her humor had failed her. Each night, she watched the replay alone, studying her own tone, her expression, the smirk that now seemed more cruel than clever. It wasn't the first time she'd faced backlash, but this felt different. A few nights later, she joined a charity dinner in Manhattan. Reporters hovered nearby, cameras flashing as she stepped out of her car. One shouted, "Joy, have you spoken to Florence since the show?" Joy hesitated before answering. "No," she said, forcing a smile. "But I hope she's doing well." We both said our piece. Inside the gala, people were polite but distant. Some gave her sympathetic smiles. Others avoided her altogether. It was the strange, isolating consequence of being both famous and fallible. The world adored you until it didn't. Across town, Florence was at home, barefoot on her couch, scrolling through messages from fans around the world. Stories poured in, women writing about toxic workplaces, teenage girls describing moments they'd been shamed for what they wore, older women thanking her for reminding them that confidence didn't expire with age. Florence read every one of them. For once, the noise of fame had turned into something meaningful, connection. Her phone buzzed with a new notification. A text from an unknown number. "Joy here. Hope you're doing all right. You held your ground. Maybe I needed to see that." Florence stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, "Thank you, Joy. I think we both learned something." And that was it. No grand reconciliation, no TV reunion. Just two women, flawed, human, different, quietly moving on. By the end of the week, the clip of their exchange had surpassed 50 million views. The View's ratings soared, though the network stayed silent, carefully navigating the balance between controversy and ethics. But for Florence, the moment had become something more than viral fame. It was a symbol of standing tall when the world expected you to bow. When asked later in an interview if she regretted walking out, Florence smiled thoughtfully. "Not at all," she said. "Sometimes walking away is the loudest thing you can do." As the lights of New York shimmered against the skyline, the story that started as a clash on morning TV had transformed into something far bigger. A conversation about power, respect, and authenticity. Joy Behar remained unapologetically herself, but a little quieter, a little more thoughtful. Florence Pugh moved forward, her voice stronger than ever, her image not defined by scandal, but by strength. The world would soon move on to another controversy, another celebrity headline. But for millions who watched that moment live and felt something stir inside them, the memory of it lingered. It wasn't just about an argument. It was about the courage to walk away with your dignity intact. And now the question is yours. What would you have done? Was Florence right to leave? Or should she have stayed and fought it out on air? Let your voice be heard in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to Prime Narrator for more intense, cinematic stories, where the spotlight reveals not just fame, but the truth behind it. Like, comment, and share if you believe every voice deserves respect, no matter who's asking the questions.